Hey everyone, and welcome to Design Studio Perth's second official branding webinar. Thank you for joining us. Hi to Scott, who's on the other side. I'm Tracy Fryer, for those of you that haven't met me. I've been in the creative industry for a number of years and I'm passionate about helping our clients build impactful brands. We have Design Studio Perth senior designer Rudy Smith joining us. Rudy, over to you.
Hi, Tracy. Thanks for having me. I'm Rudy Smith. I'm also a graphic designer. I'm senior graphic designer for DSP. Also got a number of years experience and found my home at DSP. Loving it.
Thanks, Rudy. So Design Studio Perth, who are we? We help our clients grow with distinction through captivating branding and design. We're an integrated branding and graphic design agency, and we help our clients take their brand from standard to strategic. We also like to help our clients navigate their way through the branding overwhelm. We understand that branding can be very overwhelming. So we like to break it down into, bite-sized chunks that makes it easy for business owners to understand. And of course, to reach your business vision and your goals as well. So the webinar goals for this evening is to help you gain a better understanding of what exactly branding is. We also want to show you how to leverage branding in your business to ideally generate more leads and sales. We also want to show you how to use branding to establish value in your services or product, and to show you how to create brand cohesion across the various marketing platforms for web, print, and social media. So what exactly is branding? So the diagram over here illustrates that we have our product or services on the left-hand side. We then have our clients and customers on the right-hand side. And in between the two of those sits our brand. So a brand is essentially built to represent who you are as a business and how you wish to be perceived by your ideal clients and customers. It's a way to distinguish yourself from your competitors and to clarify what exactly it is that makes your company a better choice over the competition. And more importantly, it's to establish value in your service or product. So this is an analogy that I love to use. Marketing is like asking someone on a date, and branding is the reason they say yes. So the branding side of things is essentially how we look to that ideal mate, I guess, on the other side, and marketing is asking that person on that date. So how exactly does branding impact your business? So there's a few different ways. Number one is perception. As I mentioned before, it's how your ideal clients perceive your service or product. Also, in terms of your reputation, it helps you establish trust. Clients or customers will do business with they will do businesses with companies that they know, like, and trust. I can't word today. It also increases the value of your business. So if you are creating a sellable asset that you one day want to sell, a potential investor will ask you, do you have your brand established? It also impacts your business in terms of customer loyalty. If we think of Apple, for example, they have repeat clients that consistently return to them and they're loyal to that brand. Also, branding supports your advertising. So if you're going to, invest 50K in a marketing spend, you have to make sure that your brand aligns with that, because essentially the audience that's going to see that brand, if you're spending that type of money, you want to make sure that your branding is on par and attracts those leads in the door for you. So what we found is that these are the 8 drivers of branding. So a lot of business owners, when they first start, or they perhaps been in business a few years, they're very subjective brand creations. So the brand hasn't been built with their ideal client in mind. They tend to have optimistic reliance on a standard brand. So like the ad campaign spend, they haven't really deciphered who their ideal client is, in terms of their visual identity, which Rudy will touch on more in a moment, what colors, what fonts, what styles sits with the brand. We find that they tend to have a haphazard brand presentation and messaging because they haven't done that foundational work in the vision of their brand. Things are very haphazard and they kind of just happen by chance. There's no clear strategy. We also find with the likes of Canva, all of those sort of generic platforms, that the brand assets are not unique to the brand. So what that means in terms of icons, perhaps infographics, stock photos and so on, they're not unique to the brand. They're not bespoke. So the likelihood of a competitor or someone else in the same space using those graphics is very likely. And again, you kind of get washed out or overlooked in that marketplace because you're not distinct. We also find that they have incomplete brand messaging and presentation. So some businesses haven't defined their key marketing messages. They haven't defined their tagline. They have inconsistent marketing because, again, they haven't defined who their clients are. They're not sure if they're on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook. They haven't really thought much about that either. And everything looks very different. So they might have, 5 variations of their logo, and they've got, 10 different colors across the board, which can really, from a professional point of view, start to make things look very tacky. And essentially, because of these different drivers here, what happens to the brand is that it slowly decays because there's no strategy in place. There's nothing that's really been built for purpose to align with that ideal client and essentially bringing more leads and more business. So at Design Studio Perth, we've established the 3 pillars of branding. So the first one being your brand messaging. So this is essentially how you'll sound to your ideal clients. The second one we've established is your visual identity. So this is how you'll look in terms of your visuals, your logo, your brand colors, and your fonts. The third one is your brand media. So this is all your photos, your videos, the imagery associated with your brand. So we've got how you'll sound, how you'll stand out, and how you'll look. And in order for our marketing to be successful, these 3 pillars really need to align with our ideal client, because what happens is that they flow into everything that we do in the marketing space. So what we found, if one of these isn't done correctly, the likelihood of any of these, any of these marketing tasks down the bottom here, really giving you a return on investment or being effective will not be very likely, because essentially you've got one of these pillars missing. So it's super important that your messaging, your visual identity, and your brand media are clearly established before you go and create any type of graphic design or web design. I get so many people who are having a web design develop, but they don't have a visual identity. So it's super important from that brand cohesion point of view that you do want to have your brand visual identity established first before you go and have your website designed. Even in terms of your social media as well, if there's no visual aesthetic to work with, it's very hard to create a cohesive look for your brand. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to look at the Design Studio Perth Brand Compass. The Brand Compass is a tool that we've created that really helps business owners, number one, create that cohesion. And also they don't have to reinvent the wheel every time they go to do any kind of marketing, right? So if you don't have a visual identity or brand compass, you probably find yourself in a situation where you're spending hours in Canva or Word or whatever your program of choice is, trying to create something for your brand. But what you'll find is the hours get lost because there's no clear foundation established. So we'll just go over to the brand compass. So the brand compass consists of 2 components. So we've got our messaging toolkit, which forms the brand compass on the left-hand side here. And then we have the brand style guide. So this is the visual identity. So I'm going to walk you through what each of those components are. So essentially what we always want to do is we want to define that tagline. So Design Studio Perth's tagline is Grow with Distinction. That is our tagline. You also want to define your vision and mission, because this will feed into everything else in your business that you do. If you haven't got these clearly defined, I highly recommend taking some time and figuring out what exactly that is for your business. And even having done this exercise myself, it's super powerful. What we also do is touch on your brand values, another great thing to establish if you haven't as of yet. Our brand personality, we use Acres brand personality dimensions. So when you think of a brand, it's almost like you're creating a person. So when you establish a certain personality with the brand, it really helps with your marketing, in that you can really be quite targeted in how you represent that brand and how it impacts that ideal client. So again, this is just specific to Design Studio Perth. We have sophistication and the ruler, and that's the personality that's associated with Design Studio Perth. Again, to define your elevator pitch. So this feeds into all your marketing, networking, websites, social media, and again, that consistent messaging that people experience every time that they come across your brand. Your services overview is also very important, in that it kind of lays out exactly what the business offers and also any processes that you might have. So we have a 4-part process: discover, define, design, and maintain. So this just really outlines it as well. So that way anyone working with your brand can essentially go back to this document and get a very clear overview of what exactly the business is about. We also define your USP, so your unique selling proposition. So this is what makes your business different. Any key messages, again, super important for any print collateral, social media, for your website, even in person when you're networking, what are those messages that you keep conveying? bearing in mind that I think it takes 52 different points of contact before people might somewhat recognize our brand. So it's very important that the visual communication, verbal communication is cohesive across the board. We also really help define your target audience. And if you haven't done this, this is a game changer for your business. You really want to get super clear on who that ideal client is. So, for example, Design Studio Perth's ideal client is Steve. He's 55. He's married, potentially divorced twice, living and working in Perth, Australia. So we've got really clear on who exactly Steve is, because that way we can really create marketing collateral that aligns with Steve and essentially grabs Steve's attention. Your tone of voice. So this speaks of how it is that you write your copy. Do you use slang? For example, it could be "Hey babe" or something along those lines. Is that part of your brand tone of voice in which you speak to your audience? Of course, this is specific to Design Studio Perth, so always professional, informative, and switched on. So again, these would be specific to your brand. What we'll do is I'll pass over to Rudy, and Rudy's going to walk us through the brand identity guidelines. Rudy, over to you.
Thanks, Tracy. Tone of voice, hey, babe. Right. So, yeah, just referring back to your 3 pillars of branding. One was brand messaging. So that obviously sets the tone. And then we move over to this part, which is visual identity, pillar number 2. So again, when it comes to a logo, and we've discussed this many times before, Tracy, it's so important to have a custom logo. And you do get your websites like Canva and many, many other free webs or logo generator programs. But again, like you mentioned, it's very generic. You find your icons on there that many people have used before. So it's so important to have a real custom logo. And that is what this page shows you. We're referring to the DSP logo, where I've done many, many concepts. I've had a very difficult client, but she's a proud client now. So this page just gives you an example of how I specifically drew different concepts for the DSP logo. And you'll see here that I specifically played with the D, S, and P, and that obviously led to the final logo, which you'll see on this screen. Again, it's a sketch. So it's super important to have a custom logo. You want a logo that is yours and that really speaks to your personality and your brand, as you'll see here with this sketch. Right, so on this page, we specifically give you a breakdown of the different logo marks and your primary logo. It's super important that we have that separate so that you know what your logo mark is, what is distinctive about that logo mark, and what your primary logo looks like. So that is what we display on this page. On this page, we give you a logo breakdown, or the logo construction rather, how we built that logo. As you'll see there at the bottom, I specifically mentioned the D, the S, and the P, and how that formed the overall logo mark. On this page, it's super important to talk about clear space. Now, when placing your logo within text or in a brochure or wherever you may use your logo, it's super important to have that specific clear space around your logo. You need to have breathing room around your logo. And that is what we indicate with those X's in the corners, as well as the spaces that are open next to the logo. On this page, we give you a breakdown of the different kinds of layout that we provide your logo in. Now, usually what we provide is a stacked logo. That would be a logo that has the icon or logo mark above the name. And then we have a horizontal logo, which is more landscape layout for the logo. Now, on this page, we give you the breakdown of that in the different colors, on the different brand color backgrounds, as well as the one color options as well.
And really, sorry, if I can add something really important, to also understand is that you will need a different logo format, either your stacked version or your landscape version, depending on what marketing project you have at hand. So we come across a lot of business owners who only have the square one. So whoever you're working with, always make sure that you do get the 2 options along with the different color variations. You always want a light and a dark as well.
Great point, Tracy, especially when it comes to websites. I see a lot of brands that use, let's say, a stacked logo that is again with the logo mark above the name, squashed into the corner of the site. It's not visible enough, and that's where the landscape version is So important. On this page, we show you the exact same layouts, but just in a black and a white version. Very important to have those color options as well. The next page is your color breakdown. Now, these are super important. It's important for a brand to have specific colors that tie in with the brand and who they are and what they do. On this page, we give you breakdowns of the hex codes, the Pantones, the CMYK, as well as the RGB. Super important that you have your own brand colors. The reason we give you this page is that once you send your logo or any of your marketing collateral to a printer or to another designer, they have a clear guide on what colors must be used, and they cannot deviate from any of those colors. We give you set rules at the top and on the side. Super important to have this page in your brand style guide.
Yeah, and something else I wanted to mention as well, if you're doing any kind of ad campaigns or any type of advertising, you do need to have at least a few colors in your brand style guide to really facilitate that. If you've only got, say, blue and gray, for example, it's going to be very hard for that digital agency to create anything, that's effective. So it's really important, as Rudy has mentioned, to have your primary colors defined as well as your secondary colors, and this just expands the color usage of the brand.
Right, font breakdown. Just like with the color page and the color breakdowns, it's super important to have your specific fonts that are used in any of your marketing collateral, your documents, your website, whatever else. We give you a set breakdown of what fonts we feel work for your brand and match your current logo. And again, you cannot deviate from these specific fonts, and we give you set rules on the side as well, and what not to do and which fonts not to use. Super important as well.
And these fonts are really easy to install too. We give you the files, whether you've got a Mac or a PC. They're really easy to install on your computer. And then that way you can use them on your Word docs, your Excel spread. So that way anything that you're doing is on brand.
Logo misuse. One of the issues that I see with a lot of brands is where clients change their logos. Now, it's very important that the logo files we send you, they are used as is. And we give you obviously loads of different file formats, explainers with that. So on this page, we explain exactly what not to do with your logo. Don't change the color, don't change the font or the layouts. Super, super important, because there needs to be consistency throughout your brand. Logo is the first thing that people see. And if your logo is pink on the one billboard and gray on the other billboard, the consistency is lost. On this page, we explain exactly what not to do. But I have to just mention that this is obviously DSP social media. So Tracy's photos are featured in these, but they're not in all social media. But this is just a breakdown of the social media tiles for Instagram, for example. We do the same with yours. We give you these templates, a set of 9 tiles that you can then obviously edit yourself. But this is just a general layout idea of what we think would work for your social media.
Yes, especially if you have got a social media manager who might be, outsourced or external to your business. This just kind of sets the tone for your social media and the visual aesthetic that needs to be created for those socials.
Yeah, we've got the other social media banners, which is LinkedIn, and we've got Facebook banners as well. We give you specifically personal and business banners, or covers rather, for LinkedIn, and for Facebook, we do the same. Again, we give you the general layout of what we feel would work, and we can update this for you depending on whether you sell a product or if you just want to show your logo. This is what we feel would work for your banner.
We've gone over Facebook. Thank you, Rudy. Great. So what we want to do is touch on some infamous brands that have used their brand style guide to really establish value in their products. So if we look at Louis Vuitton, for example, they were valued at $26.3 billion, I think it was last year. They have a profit margin of approximately 98%. The average bag costs $170 to make, but because of their bespoke brand and their luxury brand they've curated, their bags tend to retail for around about $8,500, and that's on the cheap side. So just really wanted to showcase how the branding supports that luxury side of things for Louis Vuitton. So like Rudy explained with the Design Studio Perth visual identity, this is the Louis Vuitton visual identity. They've got their custom logo that's been designed there. They've got any digital assets, so custom, illustrations, and these get used across their website, on their beautiful bags, on their clothing. They've really become iconic brand assets for Louis Vuitton. And again, this is touching on the colors that are associated with the brand and the fonts as well. So just really wanted to showcase how very well-known brands use their own brand compass, to essentially create that brand cohesion across literally everything that they do. So this also outlines their photography use. Again, these aren't necessarily the photos that need to be used, but it really establishes the style and the visual aesthetic to be used across a campaign they might be running or across their website also. In terms of their brand positioning and target market, that's also very clearly defined. They've got their marketing mix. So again, this just really helps lay a very clear foundation for a brand that has a strategy behind it. If we look at Apple, everyone knows this one. They were valued at, hopefully I can say this figure, $880.5 billion, with a profit margin of approximately 65%. The average iPhone 14, for example, costs $460 to make, and it retails for around about $1,300. So again, showcasing their visual identity, their colors, their iconic logo mark, the apple. And again, this is a brand that doesn't even really need a full logo. They just literally have the apple there. That's how the brand history that's been established with Apple. Also, the different kind of variations. They do have a fairly monochromatic color palette, but again, it works for what they do. Featured icons. So again, your brand compass can talk about the icons that are associated with your brand, your products, and even your logo. They go down to the very proportion of the logo. Some will have a minimum size that the logo needs to be. And whilst it might seem pedantic, it's really things like this that sets your brand apart from the rest. This is one of Design Studio Perth's clients, Paul Klassen. So he's a business advisor who branded his business, and since business has experienced an increase in 50% in revenue. So it definitely does give you a return on investment when your branding is cohesive. It's been, custom designed for your ideal client as well. Great. So we just wanted to highlight some key takeaways. So branding establishes value in your business, service, or product. Branding is a perception you create in the mind of your audience. Have your brand messaging clearly defined. So if you go back to those pillars, that's pillar 1. It's important that your brand aligns with your ideal client and not the business owner. I cannot stress this enough. A lot of business owners create their brand around themselves. You really need to think about who it is. Is it Jane? Is it Steve? Where do they hang out? What do they like? Are they at the sailing club? You really want to build out that profile because that will help feed into every other part of your marketing, and especially your visual identity and your core messaging. Create a visual identity specific, custom to your business. So that's pillar 2. Avoid generic platforms like Canva and logo generators. This is more for your visual identity. Canva does serve a space in that if you do have a social media manager and you've got some templates for your socials, that does give them easy access. But again, when it comes to really building out that visual identity, you do want to avoid these sort of generic platforms. Ensure brand cohesion by using your brand style guide, a bit like Louis Vuitton, across the various marketing platforms for web, print, and social media. And Louis Vuitton, for example, uses it on their bag, their fabric, everything. Have a bespoke brand photo shoot or videos created for your business. Again, stock photos have a place, but they are very popular because a lot of business owners actually do fear getting, in front of the camera, and I've experienced that as well. But the value that it adds to your business and the personalization is huge. So that's pillar number 3. And always remember that branding is an investment in your business. So whenever you're doing any type of branding, marketing, website development, anything like that, you really want to make sure that you're going to get a return on your investment. Great. So what we'll do is we'll go over to any questions. I'll just stop my screen share. You guys are welcome to pop the questions in the chat if you have any. Just stop that one. There we go.
So Tracy, what are the issues that you've encountered with branding clients in the past?
Yeah, how long do we have? No, I think the biggest one for me is that a lot of business owners actually underestimate the power of a brand. A lot of them think that it's just a willy-nilly logo that they need, when a brand is so much more than that. A logo, yes, forms part of your brand, but when you look at those three pillars, those are really the foundations for your brand, and it's going to impact everything that you do. So I think one of the biggest things I see is that business owners underestimate the value of brand and the value that it can actually add to your business as well. So that would be one of them. The other one is that they are reluctant to really realize where their business is at. Like they might have, their child might have designed their logo 5 years ago, but they don't acknowledge and really assess their brand. So they've now been in business 5 years. They've grown as a business owner, as a business. The ideal clients potentially changed, and a lot of them don't really take the time to sit and assess what it's like from their client's perspective of how their brand actually looks. So I highly encourage, if you haven't in a long time really sat down and looked at your brand, I at least recommend doing it every quarter, because you really want to make sure, so your brand doesn't decay, that everything is on point.
True, very true. I think one of the issues that I've encountered with clients many times is a client really wants the brand to sort of reflect them and their
Yes.
personality, not the actual product. And I've got a great example. I've done a logo for a client in the past. It was a gym client, it was a really big buff client, manly man, and he liked the color pink. He really liked the color pink, but he wanted t-shirts branded and supplements made, but he wanted that color for his branding. And that is where it's very important to steer clients into maybe just the right direction. That pink might not be the right color for his target market, because he was not specifically targeting females. So I did guide him on colors to use, and his brand is successful now. So I think that's one of the issues. Clients want to stick to what they like, and they don't think of the bigger picture.
Yes, and it's also great that he trusted your advice, because sometimes, the advice one might give is not necessarily taken on board. But I think it's important to note that whoever you are working with, if they are an expert in that space, whatever they are saying is always with your best interests at heart.
True. And I think the other point that me and you both encountered before is redoing or having to redo client logos. It's super, super important that clients provide their designers the correct file formats for their logo. And we call it a vector file. And what a vector file is, in a nutshell, is basically a file that you can resize to any size without it having pixelation or blurriness or whatever. So referring back to programs like Canva or websites like Canva, you might get a nice logo on there. Again, it might be a generic logo, but the output or the file that is exported from that website is the incorrect format. And that usually requires someone like me to redo that logo in the correct format. Clients sometimes don't understand that part because they've got the logo file, so it should work, but it doesn't always. And that, again, is why it's so important to get a custom logo done from scratch, because we do it from Sketch, and we do it in Vector. So we give you all the files and tools that you need to use any other printer or designer in future. Hopefully you don't use another designer, but DSP. But
yeah, and the great thing about custom is that you don't have to worry that someone else has got the same logo. And if you are, building a sellable asset, or you are trying to really stand out in the marketplace, again, those generic platforms that don't give you a vector file. There's even some agencies that don't give a vector file. So whoever you're working with, make sure that you do get that vector file for your website. Always get your cPanel access, because without that, you will not be able to do anything with your website, and that agency will always hold that website. It's literally theirs. So always make sure vector file. Copy, you always make sure you get the actual editable Word documents, and also with your website, get your cPanel access.
True. And just like with logos, that you need the correct file format, colors, fonts. Again, I refer back to those 2 pages, very important pages in the brand compass. If you've got one sort of font, let's say Times New Roman, and on one document, and you've got Comic Sans on another marketing collateral, there's no consistency.
No.
That is why brand style guide and brand compass is so important. Yes, it does cost a little bit of extra money, but it's a tool that you will use forever, and it's really, really important.
Yeah, it definitely saves a lot of time, and it saves money as well, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. And in terms, another question I always get asked is, how long does it take to actually brand a business? So it depends. If you are building out the entire, logo, visual identity, all the way through to social media and website, generally you look at about a 3-month, 12-week time frame. If you do find that you're just looking to have your logo and your brand style guide created, or your brand compass, that's usually around about a 2 to 4 week process. Rudy does a great job of creating a mood board, and that's really a visual tool to make sure that we have understood the brief correctly, because the brief, can be interpreted in so many different ways. So the mood board that we supply really makes sure that we are on the same page with what the client has in mind for their branding, and that we can make any changes there, instead of getting to the logo and then we have to make more changes there as well. So that's a really powerful tool.
A good point, Tracy. Maybe let's discuss mood boards. I feel a mood board is really, really important, because clients have got these elaborate ideas, and sometimes
Some of them are great.
Some of them are great. Some of them not so great, but that's why we are here, to steer you in the right direction. But a mood board is, and I sometimes don't want to type it in an email, but I call it a brain dump sort of board, because that's, in a nutshell, where I put on a bunch of ideas, whether it's fonts, colors, general logos that are owned by other companies or whatever. But the idea of a mood board is to sort of come up with the best route to take for your design. So if a client has all these ideas and they don't know where to start, and the same here, that is where a mood board really, really helps, because I show you what I think will work and what fonts, and I give you loads of font options, and just lay out ideas. And based on those ideas that I give, we can then go on the best route for your logo design.
Yes. I think Scott has a question. So, hey, Tracy and Rudy, does DSP brainstorm the business tagline in the branding process? Thanks, Scott. We definitely do. So we have what's called a brand discovery session. So we go through it's usually around about a two-hour set of questions that we go through, and that really helps us, again, like Rudy said, with the mood board, get everything out on paper, and then we work out what the tagline is, what the slogan is, what those key messages are. So everything from the visuals to the wording and even to the brand media, we help you with all of that as well.
Yeah, and
Did you have anything you want to add there, Rudy?
We've got our lovely copywriters on board as well, who assist with all of it, and they're really great.
Yeah, so we have our brand specific copywriters. So they're trained in creating brand copy. There is a difference. You might get, copywriters that only will do website copy or social media copy. Both Chelsea and Sean are brand copywriters, which makes a huge difference, because they help form part of that strategy side of things in establishing those key messages and that tagline as well. Great. Thanks, Scott. Anything else you want to mention, Rudy?
Well, that DSP is just the best brand in the whole of Australia. But very important, we do cater for international clients as well. Got to put that out there.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And it's great to have a mix of clients too. because it really, showcases, how different businesses are doing things across the board. But again, that brand compass and visual identity really is, like you've seen with Louis Vuitton and Apple, that lays that foundation for everyone moving forward.
True. Thanks, Scott, for
Great.
your
Well,
questions.
yeah, thanks, Scott. Thanks, Rudy. Thanks for joining. Thanks, everyone who joined us tonight. And yeah, we'll probably have another one in a couple of weeks. Oh, no, a couple of weeks, but 6 weeks' time on brand copy. And we'll get Sean on there as well. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Thanks, Rudy.
Thanks, Tracy.
Cheers.